I remember the excitement I felt when Season of the Chosen released in February 2021, and we got to meet Empress Keitel for the first time. Even then, it felt like this season was a huge turning point for the story of the Cabal. They would finally get to step out of the shadow, cast by villains such as Callus and Ghaul. And by the end of the season, it was clear that the world of Destiny 2 had fundamentally changed forever. Before we can have that moment, we will need to step back into the shadows. Since starting this series at Shadowkeep, we have not had to talk about Callus or even Ghaul all that much. And that ends here. In part 1 of this release, we are going to follow the storylines of Callus, Ghaul, and Keitel from their origins in the Midnight Coup, through the Red War, through the Crown of Sorrows plotline in Season of Opulence, and then ultimately to the fall of Torobatl as described in Chosen's Empress lorebook. Part 2, when it releases, will then delve into the seasonal story itself, as well as cover what went down in Trials after Beyond Light, and what Callus's final actions were before the seasonal story begins. So subscribe if you want to be notified when that next episode drops. If you are listening to one of these for the first time, then to set expectations, these episodes are an audio experience of lore readings set to Destiny music, and the visuals you get if you're on YouTube or Spotify where it is a video podcast, it just consists mostly of my commentary for different entries, alongside a related piece of concept art or in-game footage, and then it has the occasional cutscene that I give some audio description for. So the visuals are completely optional, and I encourage you to think of this more as an audiobook that you can play in the background. There are timestamps and a full list of all the entries used in the description below. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 1: The Midnight Coup.
Has come to an end. Too long have the people of Torobatl languished under their heel.
We start with the story of how Callus came to be Emperor, and subsequently how he came to be exiled aboard the Leviathan. We will also begin the book Empress here with one of the earliest stories of Keitel's life as daughter to the Emperor, and also the book Confessions, which gives us a Scion's perspective of events. Legend of Acrius. In the Cabal legend, a hero seeks to possess the sun. He succeeds, then he becomes Emperor. The Cabal are not a subtle people. That really is the entire myth. A Cabal named Acrius desires the sun, he takes it, and becomes the first Emperor of the Cabal. Other scholars have already noted the parallels and differences with our own ancient Earth myth of Icarus, which famously has a far more humbling ending. I am more interested in how Cabal leaders throughout history have deployed this legend as a rhetorical and political justification for conquest. Among the most relevant such figures is Dominus Ghaul himself, who appears to have a personal affinity for the Acrius myth. I must also note here that, while linguistic analysis of the Cabal language and its many dialects is incomplete, they do not appear to have a word for the concept of hubris. Research notes of Tyra Khan. Alone, as a god.
My Imperial Guard marched into the temple where the Senate convened. They formed a protective circle from which I might bestow the gift of my address. From this day forward, I shall take up all the Empire in my embrace, for I am father of the Empire, as I am father to all creation. I will suffer no tired institution nor petty bureaucrat to stand between me and my children. I am the perfect, loving God. All will tremble to know me. The Imperial Guard charged their railguns in perfect unison.
Inaugural Address.
I wanted a desert of pure white sand to stage my celebration. It took them 3 days to clear the wasteland of any stone or plant of offending color, but when they were done, it was a perfect canvas for the Violet Pavilion. We recreated my court in nearly every detail beneath the glinting sun. The first act of my coronation was to have the Consul kneel at my feet. He was a pathetic figure, stripped of title, rank, and clothing. He would never wield power again, and would beget no heir. I made sure of that personally. I had only a single word for him: run.
Mob Justice.
I never thought of my palace as the true court. The only throne that mattered to me looked down upon the public commons. From that seat, there was no barrier between me and the glorious, adoring mob. I was their father. They were my children. It was there that I brought the corrupt to suffer the people's justice. How they cried as I threw their riches to the crowd. It amused me to see the dawning of realization in their eyes. There would be no safety for them, as there had been no safety for those they had made to suffer. One by one, I tossed those weeping fools to the people. The mob let out a great cry of joy and stripped them of their robes, tore the jewelry from their bodies.
Empress. Chapter 1. Storyteller. Gold silks and purple velvets hung above the gilded chair where Astia settled in to tell the Princess Keitel her nightly story. Astia was the Emperor's myth keeper, a talented storyteller and scion who held all the legends and histories of the conquered worlds in her mind. Keitel's father often said,
Astia is an Athenaeum world in and of herself.
He often retreated either into his pleasures or his unpredictable melancholy, leaving Astia to fill Keitel's mind with fantasy. Holding a toy model of a warship in her hands, Keitel sat on the floor before Astia.
Astia,
she said politely, knowing she would not receive her story otherwise.
please tell me how the faraway people say the universe came to be.
Astia considered, searching through the library of her mind, and then nodded. Imagine the universe as swirling chaos, Astia said softly. Keitel closed her eyes and saw it. Among the chaos stands Erkin La, the first host who blinks herself into existence with the first thought. Chaos must come to order. Keitel saw a creature tremendous beyond belief in her mind's eye. And so, to satisfy the first thought, which would become the first law, Erkin La consumes the chaos of the void and gives birth to the ordered universe. Keitel opened her eyes, and they were bright with intrigue. That is how the Tian would say the universe began, Astya said. Keitel looked at the toy in her hands, and then back at Astya.
Where does this giant woman live?
The Tian would say she is the very fabric of the universe. When you look to the sky, when you look out into space, you are looking into Erkin La's mouth. Keitel turned her toy for a little while. Then, looking up, she said fiercely,
I will challenge Erkin La to a battle and defeat her. Then my people will own everything in the universe.
Astya chuckled fondly. Yes, I think you would, she said. But the Empire has already defeated the Tian. None of them are left. And with no one to believe in her, Erkin La is dead as well.
Then I will believe in her.
Astya's lips pulled back in a curious smile. You'll believe in her so that you can challenge her?
Yes.
Laughing again, Astya placed her hand on Keitel's head. Ah, brave Keitel. A warrior so mighty, she wills her enemies into existence. Keitel's chest swelled with incandescent pride. Ghost Primus.
Ghaul was an unexpected gift to my Colosseum. A disfigured albino from the outer wastes who defeated opponents 3 times his weight. How could I resist such a unique creature? He fought with terrible discipline and patience. Most gladiators wanted to stand in the center of the arena and trade blows until the weaker one died. Not Ghaul. He never attacked from the front, never stood in one place. Frustrated and exhausted, his opponent would make a mistake. I used to play a game with those puffed up aristocrats that would gamble at my arena. I bet on Ghaul, and anyone who had displeased me had to bet against him. It was fun for a time, but his talent was too valuable to risk in the Colosseum. I appointed him Primus of the Red Legion, and instead set him loose upon my enemies.
Empress, Chapter 2, Star Pilot. In a war chamber built by her father's scion mind sculptors, Keitel piloted a fighter through a strange world. It twisted and turned on itself to create strange, rotting landforms all around her. She passed mountains that sprouted weeping tumors and saw fields crusted over with scabrous tissue. The exhilaration of flight made her eyes sharp. The familiarity of the controls kept her hands steady. She was so much better here than in any of her father's tedious lessons. Awake, alive. Arath's voice rumbled in her ear like a surfacing land whale.
Imagine all of Torobatl as the putrid grave swamps of Ark.
She said.
Centuries sunk in muck. A testament to someone else's conquest.
Keitel narrowed her eyes at her ship's heads-up display as a corrupted flame suddenly burned a hole in the sky itself, straight ahead.
There are monsters at the edges of our territory that would tear our world open and turn it inside out.
Amun growled.
They fear nothing.
Keitel felt a jolt, the telltale rock tilt and drag of damage at the tail of her ship. She tried to pull up. Through the hole in the sky emerged a hag, enormous, robed and screaming. Emerald fire burst from her claws and spiraled toward Keitel's ship, but she was too dazzled by the fireworks to avoid it. Seconds before the flames engulfed her ship, Keitel heard,
"What do you fear, princess?"
In these war chambers, simulated death felt like real death. Panic, pain, darkness. Realistic consequences for failure. The chamber left its inhabitants floating in a void after defeat. And in that emptiness, minutes could feel like hours. When the darkness finally evaporated, Keitel stood in the blank chamber, alone. Amun emerged and crossed the room.
"You're dead,"
she told her. Keitel kept her back straight and voice level, though there was a tremor in her arm, a humiliating after effect.
"Yes. You were distracted,"
Amun said.
"I saw you, looking around like you were on a sightseeing flight.
She made a dismissive gesture with her left hand.
Weaned and coddled on too many stories. I won't fail again."
Keitel said.
"Wrong,"
said Amun-Ra.
"You will die many more times if you wish to live.
She clapped a hand on Keitel's shoulder.
Do it again."
Conspirator.
Ghaul spent too much time in too close communion with those I had humbled. No good would come of those hushed tones and sidelong glances. Do you think I would not notice? I dispatched a spy to follow him. To think that I felt guilt in that moment. One should never doubt their gut when it comes to trust in another. I realize now what I should have realized then. As I am like no other, then no other is alone as I. What a curse it is to be a god that loves.
Midnight Coup.
The conspirators came late in the night, skulking into my court while we caroused. Ghaul himself led the coup, and it was by his own Red Legion that we were arrested. Imagine my surprise to see the Consul stride into my court so puffed up with pride. He took cheap pleasure hurling spittle in my face. We were frog-marched to the Leviathan under cover of darkness. There was to be no execution. Ghaul and the Consul feared the mob. They knew how tenuous their grip on power would be, and how the people adored their god Emperor. Ghaul dared not look me in the eye. What was the emotion on his face? Was it shame? How could he bear such hate for one who had been as a father to him? We were sealed inside the Leviathan and ejected into the furthest reaches of space, left to the same fate I had determined for the Consul so long ago. We were left to die.
Sins of the past.
I weep for what the Cabal have become. A war machine forged in Ghaul's own image. His obsession with the ideal form has produced a hollow people, devoid of culture, robbed of their history. The Leviathan is now home to the last of us true Cabal. We will remember the old ways, for I am the wellspring from which our great civilization flows. And when my empire returns, the traitors will see us as through a dark mirror. We will be a terrifying reminder of their former selves. In that moment, they will feel the shame of their betrayal. They will know I have come for my revenge. The Red Legion will not escape the sins of their past. They shall be consumed by them.
Confessions. Entry 1. By the mind of Match, Shadow Counselor to the true Emperor, upon the Leviathan, helpless to alter its course. Today, I pour out water from the Y goblet, so that my ancestors may wash their eyes. My every thought and purpose for my Emperor Callus, once and future sovereign. We pass through the outer marches of our lost empire. One day, the Leviathan howls along at speed, and the next, it drifts on an idle course. We still cannot repair the butchered control systems, and our Emperor, who once ordered this ship's construction for his purposes, refuses to share his knowledge in metaconcert. Yet, as we leave the space that was once his dominion, I see how my Emperor digests his situation. He no longer rages and spills wine. He has not cursed Ghaul's name in nearly a year. I feel his thoughts taking new shape and color. I do not know if I like it. In the fast time of relativity, we watch the Cabal change around us, and it leaves my eye cold from weeping. When Callus reigned, artists and thinkers visited the Athenaeum worlds to be inspired by alien wonders from across and beyond the Cabal. Now, the Athenaeum worlds are shut. The works they inspired have been replaced by grim assembly line weapons and the architecture of bunkers. Fountains geyser black fuel, gardens vanish beneath belching factoria. Ghaul has even disfigured the people's minds. He has dismembered the Cabal of its foreign influences, teaching the people a pit fighter's gruesome self-sufficiency. Weapons only a grunt can understand, language that can only be barked through a battle net. I mourn the empire that built wonders like the Ninth Bridge. I mourn all the client species beaten into cogs. But if I mourn, my Emperor withers entirely. Even his interest in the archives and the observatory has vanished. He no longer cares to study a universe that has offended him. He doubts his own divinity, because how could a god allow this to happen? His rage has gone, and he does not know what he has left after it. The new shape I feel in his mind is grey and smooth like fog. Among my people, I mean my people, the people of the Chalice, not the whole Scion species. We call this feeling sweet oubliette, the shelter that becomes a prison. For Callus, I imagine it feels like the loss of all appetite, even the curiosity that made him great. The counselors ask me to go to him, but I am still afraid. What if he sees my secret? What will he do? Even his beloved tea seller has already abandoned him. If he knows I still worship the old cup, and that I put it before his name in my benediction, will it be one betrayal too many? At least he no longer bellows in the night. Confessions. Entry 2. By the mind of Match, Shadow Counselor to the true Emperor, upon the Leviathan, helpless to alter its course. Today, I pour salt from the goblet, so that my ancestors may roughen their skin. My every thought and purpose for my Emperor Callus, once and future sovereign. We are at war. Here at the fringe of the Empire, fleets clash over emptiness. In council, we surmise that the tyrant Ghaul wants this void as a buffer against invasion. But isn't the irony bitter? This enemy desires nothing but our death, and so we oblige them by dying for nothing. It is the opposite of everything Callus wanted for his people. Even the new Cabal's ships are expendable. These are not the beautiful deterrents of Callus's armada. They are ugly and hasty and crude. The crews live in their armor, prisoners of their duty, escaping only through music and games smuggled into the battle.net. One popular pastime, I understand, is to draft personal fleets and legions from among real Cabal ships and soldiers, competing with comrades to win the most victories. Of course, it is very bad luck to draft your own unit. The enemy is yet worse. All Scions live in a world of minds. I believe in the cup and all its spirits because I feel those spirits every day. The print left by other minds on the things I touch and see. These hive have no spirit. Their souls are emaciated. Some horrible solvent has stripped them of everything but hate, cunning, and the will to survive. I think they worship death because it is the only salvation from their existence. I suggested that the war counselors invite Callus to observe one of Ghaul's carrier groups attacking a hive war moon. He came because he knows the value of pretending to care. But even the shape of the fleet hurt him. Ghaul and his tyrannical ally Umunarath have abandoned proud independent cruisers instruments of state, Callus liked to say, for swarms of frigates that suckle fuel from enormous fleet carriers. The Hive's portals leave no time or space for elegant vector dances, so these new ships are built for brutal exchanges at point-blank range. We felt other scions at work, hiding the traitor fleet from the Hive as they scattered drills and boarding pods in the War Moon's path. A strike at the surface was not enough. Someone would have to bring a planet cracker warhead down into the moon's viscera. Caught up in the excitement, I asked one of the war counselors how we could possibly prevail against the Hive, who was so old and so powerful. She compared our Cabal to a sea-going warship, and the Hive to a submarine. They might dive into deep metaphysical layers of existence, where we are no match for them. But in the ordinary universe, the Hive are like a submarine on the surface. Still dangerous, but not invincibly so. I was fascinated and secretly struck by the clarity of the goblet on her face. Did she believe we could ultimately defeat the Hive? No, she said. But we could hold them back long enough to live our lives. Wasn't that enough? Inviting Callus was a mistake. It only reminded him that he had no power at all. Confessions. Entry 3. By the mind of Match, upon the Leviathan, resigned to its course. Today, I fill the Y-goblet with powdered bone, so that my ancestors may dry their ink. My every thought and purpose for my Emperor, Callus, once sovereign. The Leviathan journeys through a void in the galaxy, without stars or even dust to relieve its nothingness. The astronomers say that an ancient cataclysm blasted open an abscess in the cosmos here. I feel the absence of spirits like a pressure headache, as if everything inside me wants to come rushing out. We are all losing hope. But as long as we are still losing it, then it has not run out. Scions are said to have no sense of humor, because humor comes from the unexpected, and we are clairvoyant. Well, we were not clairvoyant enough to expect the coup, so I suppose we must be blind enough to retain a sense of humor, and I can still laugh at our predicament. The loyal retinue of the curious emperor, the emperor of joyous excess, marooned in absolute nothingness. Callus won't leave his observation couch. Not to take meals, not to visit gardens or sample the wines, not to read or to write in his Imperativia Titanica, or to suggest new dishes to the cooks, or to tell us stories from faraway worlds, or even to wonder aloud why Keitel never heeded him. He stares and stares into the emptiness. I think he feels small. Most of the universe is nothing. He is nothing to it. This scar in our galaxy was cut long before he was born. I drew the Y-goblet in the dirt of a garden today. I used my finger, not my mind, so that no one would feel it. My faith was exterminated long before my people met the Cabal, in a way so total and vicious that I do not think a people without psionics could understand the pain. My ancestors were the strongest secret keepers in the universe. I know this because they survived long enough to give birth to me. I don't know how they did it, because every time I look another scion in the face, I see the Y goblet, the holy cup into which our minds were poured. What if Callus knows I'm losing my faith in him? What if I'm the poison that makes him wilt? Do you want to hear a joke? No, I already know I'll laugh. That is a scion joke. It stared back.
The Leviathan came to a halt before a wall of infinite void. It could go no further, as the navigation system had suffered a cataclysmic failure. The course that the conspirators had set crossed a space that simply didn't exist. I don't know how long we traveled. Years, millennia. Time had ceased to have meaning as I wallowed in the despair of my exile. But this event shook me out of my stupor. At the edge of the universe, we had found something. No, we had found a nothing. From the seat of my observation chamber, I stared into the perfect void. Only I, a god, could understand what I witnessed. It was a thing greater than myself. And if such a thing exists, then I too can become more.
Confessions. Entry 4. By the mind of Match. I do not know where we are. Chalice, catch and save us all. Nothing. God answers God. The void in Callus's soul called out, and this is what replied. The Leviathan's control system failed when it saw what awaits us. We are drifting into it. Callus has sealed himself in his observation chamber. His transmissions strike the thing and return to us disfigured by intolerable forces. We have gathered to share our thoughts in concert, to try to understand what's happening, but we are all afraid we will succeed. We stammer like children, and the concert fails. Is this the edge of the universe? Space cannot have an end. It goes on forever. But a hole in forever would be a kind of edge. A flaw, a defect, a place outside place. I must be calm. I must record my thoughts. Now I think of the Oxa machine, eternally lost and eternally rebuilt, passed down from civilization to civilization like a ship's black box. I think of the legends of the Hive King Oryx and his quest to pass into the deep. I took that story as an allegory. I think I was wrong. What will happen to us inside? Will the geometry of space and time collapse so that we experience the rest of our lives in a single moment, crumpled over ourselves like a tangled chain? Will I tend to myself as I die of old age, or scream warnings to my own past as we meet in the berserk maze of a twisted Leviathan? I hate the thought of it, an eternity reading my own mad mind, tasting the insanity of my own future, and thus becoming it. Even the spirits from the goblet would go mad. There is only one of us who welcomes this insanity, and I do not know why, but how could I? How could I ever anticipate or understand a god? All over the ship, broadcast from the comfort of his observation room, Callus is laughing. I am alive.
Now I've seen everything. We were all so wrong. All of this, the machines, the Elixni, the worms, the light, the nine, all of it, meaningless. This galaxy is tumbling toward a singular conclusion, and there is nothing, no one, that can stop it. How could I have missed this? It's the small moments, the simple pleasures that matter. They're all I can think about now. Food and drink aren't mere sustenance. They're a reminder that I am alive. This Leviathan, this prison ship, I will remake it, as I have been remade. No longer will it represent a mythical beast from the dreams of worms. It will serve as an icon for my newfound gluttony.
Chapter 2: The Fate of Traitors.
I am as you made me, and I would kill you were it my choice. But it is not. Keitel stayed my blade. Remember that.
We continue the Lawbook's Confessions and Empress, supplement it with the Destiny 2 Collector's Edition, and with more Leviathan Raid lore, continue Callus' story after he witnessed the end of all things at the edge of the universe, before we then catch up with the state of the Cabal leadership by the end of the Red War, and that year's post-campaign content. Confessions. Entry 5. By the mind of Match, Shadow Counselor to the true Emperor, upon the Leviathan, wandering at our Emperor's whim. Today I fill the Y goblet with dice, so that my ancestors may roll the odds. My every thought and purpose for my Emperor, Callus, once and future sovereign. I was in the observatory today when he came to me. I should have been vetting a list of loyalists for the counter-coup, but in truth, I was watching the ruined mirrors of an ancient star shell as they plummeted 400 million kilometers into a blue sun. They looked like crumpled handkerchiefs. Their fall is very slow, and those who made them are eons dead. Here on our Leviathan, all is reborn. The guard companies have buffed their armor to a syrupy shine. The ship responds ably to our commands, and we can barely quench its appetite for mass to feed its engines and factories. Music fills the gardens. The gardeners hum along as they trim and weed, and Callus dallies in the kitchens with a pinch of spice, once more unmistakably himself. I haven't thought into this journal since that day at the edge, when Callus came out of his observation bubble, overflowing with joy.
It's the end!
He bellowed, giddy as a girl with her first tusks.
It's magnificent, it's divine, it's more than I ever was. Match, it's the end of everything.
He frightened me. That day frightened all of us. None of us will speak of it, and we do not dare more than the shallowest meta-concert, lest our memories pool into a deadly truth. But in that void, Callus saw his purpose renewed. He guided us to reset the failed navigation system, repair the Traitors' sabotage, and retake control. I thought we would hurry back to the homeworld, but Callus no longer seems to pine for his lost throne, or to care at all about the reforms he once championed. Now, we wander the galaxy on an Epicurean crusade, sampling a bounty of raw furies and rare delights. All the inquisitiveness and avarice that Callus once poured into government, he now extends to his appetites. I have seen Callus feast on things no living mouth can eat. A chill superfluid of helium-4 whirled in his cup for 10 years by a single turn of his wrist. He returned a decade later to toss it back. Or a pea of neutronium that should have torn through him like fog. He told me it tasted like the thickest fudge. He is changing. He was here a moment ago. The ruined star shell caught his attention. He loves beauty, and millions of mirror-bright sails folding up like tissues in wind to fall into a blue giant are very beautiful. Eons ago, someone built these mirrors to hover on the blue star's light, and for a while, I suppose, they lived in sun-fed paradise. How did they die? I asked.
That match is the wrong question.
He tuned the observation room to track a single tumbling mirror. In life, the sail had been as wide as the space between a world and its moon. In death, the rigging had collapsed into a thistle of spin metal and glint.
What you should ask is why I am so glad they died.
I could not imagine, and I admitted it. These beings were much like us. They did not travel through time, or lacerate the universe and crawl into the wounds, or yearn for the patronage of any old machine. They were creatures of material ambition, of physics, of life. If they failed, it is an omen of death for us.
Precisely.
Callus said with wry generosity.
They were grand once. They thought, very briefly, that they would live forever. And they were wrong. We would be very ungrateful to refuse the lesson, wouldn't we?
I sat before a fountain and tried to pour out the spirits for guidance, but they would not explain. An addendum later. I have not seen Callus in the flesh since. Confessions. Entry 6. By the mind of Match, Shadow Counselor to the true Emperor, upon the Leviathan, triumphant in our Emperor's battle. Today, I filled the Y-goblet with linen, so that my ancestors may tie up their wounds. My every thought and purpose for my Emperor, Callus, once and future sovereign. We have conquered the Clips. Among all the clients of Callus's reign, all those diverse species he encouraged to join and influence our great culture, the Clips were one of his dearest favourites. When they greeted his return with missiles, it wounded him terribly. But Callus neither sulked, nor raged, nor signaled them in the dead of night to woefully demand an explanation. This I credit to his mysterious new philosophy. Instead, he asked Valus Nor to plan and execute the reconquest of the Clips, using only the Leviathan and the troops aboard. Then, he asked me to deliver an account of Clips history since the coup. Callus was proud of his aid to the Clips. They were trapped in endless war with their alien-infested biosphere, which spawns horrors wherever it grows. Callus saw this war as a regrettable but unalterable fact. So, instead of military support, he sought to enrich the Clips with fine culture and high luxury. The Clips were not pleased. After Ghaul's mutiny, the Dominus tried to secure their loyalty by sending a fleet group to win their ancient war. Of course, the legionaries discovered it was impossible to conquer the xenocidal ecosystem without destroying the planet itself. Their effort only poisoned the Clips, both world and people. After a century of botched climate engineering, toxic shock attacks, and clear and hold nonsense, Ghaul wrote off the tormented Clips as no longer essential to the strategic security of the Empire. I think the Clips hoped they could win back Ghaul's favor by defying Callus. Perhaps they thought their world was unconquerable. Perhaps they were even right in the end. Valus Nor landed on their moon and military capital, Kaga Clips, with just 6,000 troops. For 8 weeks, the Clips attacked her by ground and by orbit as their robotic interceptors swarmed the Leviathan. I was not part of the great meta-concert that helped protect us, but the might of gathered minds filled the carpets with static and gave me constant deja vu. When Nor broke out of her bastion on her famous Thunder Run, calling down the Leviathan's missiles on the vital command posts she'd identified, the Clips' defense crumbled. Their last desperate act was a commando strike at the Leviathan itself. The boarding craft slipped under our sensors, but the meta-concert felt the vengeful purpose aboard. Callus stopped us from firing.
I welcome their attempt,
He said.
Let me see their spirit.
The Clips' attack failed, of course, but there was a survivor. The one named Rull. Some think he earned a face-to-face meeting with Callus, though I doubt it was truly his face. With Kaga Clips in our control, we could destroy the Clips world at our leisure. Callus rewarded their surrender by giving Rull a gift. Everything the Clips needed to end their agonizing perpetual war. It was a sheet of paper. The thick, rough-edged sort that Callus makes out of cometry water and cotton from his personal garden. He says that he likes the smell. Rull signed it after 2 hours in a room with Callus. The Leviathan's factories shuddered into motion, forging luxurious, self-contained arcologies, pocket worlds that could hold thousands in perpetual comfort. When Rull's chosen people were safe in the arcologies, the guns of Kaga Clips bombarded the Clips' homeworld into a global firestorm. The chosen survivors in the arcologies would inherit lives of plenty. The rest had the peace of ash. The eternal war was over. I prayed to the cup in the mirror for answers. but it was Callus who responded.
Match.
He spoke into my mind just as a scion would.
I told Roll the truth. Everything is going to end soon. We must accept that. What matters is the joy and companionship we can find before the final moment. Why let billions suffer for a future that will never come? Life with no dignity and no purpose except to go on living isn't life. It's a virus. It's a curse. Better to die than to become like the Hive.
Roll left his world to journey with us. I wonder if he could not face what he'd done. Confessions. Entry 7. By the mind of Match, Shadow Counselor to the true Emperor, upon the Leviathan, crossing a place of famine. Today, I filled the Y-goblet with lithium, that my ancestors may never want for metal. My every thought and purpose for my Emperor, Callus, once and future sovereign. We have been at work for so very long that I have neglected this journal. But now, we are crossing a starved place, a burned clearing in the dark galactic forest. I find myself with time to think. Perhaps that is why my Emperor came to me again. The robotic facsimiles he manufactures are eerily like him. Or like the Callus I remember. I have the surest feeling that his true form is no longer the Emperor I knew. Perhaps he is just a mouth now, smiling, laughing, eating what it fancies. But I choose to believe he still has a soul. Why else would he come to me, except that he cares what I think of him? As he settled on the observatory couch beside me, I tried to sense the construction of his machine body. But his presence was so fierce, it was like staring into the sun.
Do you know where we are?
He asked. A part of the galaxy that was settled very long ago, I said, closing my inner eye against his radiance. A star, I found myself thinking, is an explosion that cannot escape the appetite of its own gravity. Poor fortune in supernova scattering left this area short of metals, and now there is nothing left but dim stars, dead worlds, hydrogen.
A place of poverty,
He suggested.
a graveyard.
You often speak of death, Your Majesty.
The knowledge of death is the key to happiness.
He patted the bench beside him, as if acknowledging a missing friend.
Look out there. Imagine all the trillions of beings who lived among these stars. Do you think some of them were happy?
I should hope so.
Why, Match? Why would some be happy and others miserable?
Perhaps they had more metal, I suggested dryly.
Exactly.
He clapped in delight, nearly bowling me over.
Happiness is comparative, Match. I tell you that if a rich man lived next to a woman who had 10 times his wealth, he would never be satisfied, even in marriage. He would feel poor when he looked at her. Even the basic satisfactions of our biology require contrast. The absence of thirst, the absence of hunger, the absence of loneliness.
This is a child's philosophy, Your Majesty, I protested. We need pain to know pleasure. We need loss to make us treasure gain. A runt would say these things. Why, you told me that these are homilies the miserable use to excuse their misery. Suffering does not heighten happiness. Fear does not bless us. True contentment is true in itself. He looked at me with great satisfaction, delighted by my insight, and by the way my words reflected his own wisdom.
What was the flaw in my empire match? Why did Ghaul overthrow me?
I sensed he did not want my first answer, because those disenfranchised and infuriated by his cosmopolitan reforms had united without his knowledge. Because you did not fear death, Your Majesty?
Exactly. I opened my arms to embrace all my peoples, offering them consumption without limit and celebration without end. The stars themselves burned sweet and clear, and I forgot. Even stars die.
He leaned closer to me. I felt warmth like an oven under his counterfeit skin.
You're right. The truly happy do not need misery and suffering to give their lives meaning. They exist in the moment, at peace with their inevitable death. Now that I've accepted all this will end, it has meaning again, Match. I have more than the rest of the universe. I've seen what's coming. I know the value of every moment left.
He smiled at me, his cleft pulled back from bright teeth.
And I want you to value those moments too, Match. I wonder if there is something you want to tell me. Something that would change the rest of your life. Make no mistake. An end is coming. Soon. And you will have no chance at all afterwards to correct what you regret. So, why delay? Why not tell me?
I do not remember the excuse I made as I fled. Confessions. Entry 8. By the mind of Match, priest of the chalice, upon the Leviathan, where my temple now stands. Today, I fill the Y-goblet with praise for my emperor, callous, once and future sovereign, so that my ancestors may know his generosity. I told him, he has decided where he will make everything ready for death. The Leviathan's course is set for a far system, where the Traveller awaits. His shadows are already on their way to kill Ghaul, or to die in the attempt. How could I betray him in this time of endings by keeping a secret he has asked to share? I went to him as he bathed in his royal pool, for his proxies are, of course, as exquisitely sensual as his old form. I shed my garments, there being no more taboo between us than between two animals, and sat beside him in the glow of his comfort. Your Majesty, I said, I kept a secret from you. I explained how I worshipped my ancestors, and the sacred chalice that cupped their spirits. I admitted that I had put these beliefs before him in my heart. He listened as I told him how the ancient god thoughts of my people, the operant overlords who dominated our prehistory by sheer mental penetration, had exterminated my faith for daring to see a spark of the divine in every common person.
Match,
He said.
you have committed a crime, and I will pass my sentence shortly. But first, let me ask you something. Do you think I made the right choice with the clips?
No, I admitted.
Because I ended so many lives?
Yes, Your Majesty.
But, knowing that they would soon end anyway, and that by killing most, I could allow a small few to live in happiness rather than in strife, did I not choose the greatest possible good?
I suppose, Your Majesty, that my faith makes me see the shared suffering of the clips as more fair than the survival of a happy few. If I were one of the clips, I would want a fair chance, not judgment from on high. He nodded in compassion.
I know. I once tried to be fair too, Match. An empire of excess for every citizen, no matter their class or species of birth. It is good for a ruler to raise the standards by which his subjects live. But what if that ruler has found proof, absolute proof, that existence is a zero-sum game? That there is not enough time or energy to give everyone a fair life? Knowing that, mustn't we privilege a chosen few?
I did not know, and I admitted it.
That's all right. I don't ask certainty.
He shifted himself, sending waves across the pool.
For a long time after the coup, I stared out into the infinite universe, and I saw meaninglessness. In a universe that goes on forever, there must be an infinity of calluses, all staring at the same blankness. How could I be a god if I was generic? But now that I have seen what is coming, now that there is a limit to the time afforded to us, well, it may sound cruel, Match. The less there is of everything else, the more I matter. I intend to be the last good thing in this world. I will gather my chosen companions and ease as much suffering as I can before the end. There are emperors who would take on any shape to escape death. I am not one. I am true to myself. And so, Match, are you.
He clapped me on the back with enormous gentleness.
Your only crime, my counselor, was that you denied me the chance to give you a gift. Come, show me the place you favor, and tell me the measurements you require. I will build you a temple so you can worship without fear. And all I ask is that you remember me in your prayers.
Destiny 2 Collector's Edition. An Invitation.
You're like me, aren't you? You won't settle for what you've been given. You want more. Do you desire eternal greatness? Do you seek true freedom? I alone hold the power to grant you these gifts. If you prove yourself to me, know that I am Callus, the last and greatest emperor of the Cabal. For centuries, I led the revels of my empire, and the stars themselves burnt sweet and clear. But in time, the jealous and the tight-fisted rose up and sent me into exile. And when the people called out for me, these envious rebels battered my Cabal down into grey submission. Now, I offer my gifts and delectations to you, young Celebrant. Together, we might restore laughter and great excess to the golden halls of Torobatl and all the stars beyond. But before we feast together, I must know your quality. Can you bear the weight of my favor? Are you capable of executing my vengeance? I seek equals, and they are few. I've seen more than 1,000 years of war and trouble. I fought the Sindhu escadrilles, put down the Clips revolt, and interpreted the mad prophecies of the Oxa machine. But might is not enough. For through all of this struggle, I kept the bonfires lit and the sweet wine flowing. To be emperor, you see, is to be the model of perpetual joy. A good ruler must live the life that everyone craves. For if an emperor cannot be happy, then what hope has anyone? In you, I also seek the capacity for wonder and the appetite for greatness. When I took the throne, my people bled to feed a corrupt military elite. I chased those praetorian scum from their dens of iniquity. I offered their stolen riches back to my Cabal, and I vowed to celebrate our existence in the highest luxury to set an example for my empire. No privileged few, but decadence for all. Friend, I was betrayed. I could have forgiven the traitors, for I am an emperor of limitless cheer. I swear on my own silk and treasure that although my betrayers were as close to me as my own daughter, still, I would have forgiven them, had they not also betrayed my people. It was not enough for this vile council to overthrow me. These mendacious and murderous villains, these dear companions who I kept so long at my side, they gave my Cabal to brutal military rule. Now, armored tyrants stain golden Torobatl with their dark designs. Ghaul is the epitome of their creed, an innocent orphan simmered in their poison hate. He will infect the whole Cabal with his emptiness. I have foreseen it. His life will be a quest to fill the hollow in his soul. They would have killed me, but I was too beloved and too glorious. So, they sent me away into resplendent exile upon this grand Leviathan. And from that exile, I call on you, the brave, to execute my justice upon the traitors. Save the Cabal from grey enslavement. Join me in my search for the glorious and absolute powers of the universe. Bring me the end of my enemies and prove yourself worthy of the prize Ghaul will never claim. True power, true purpose. These things I offer you, and weapons, and knowledge, and glory. I have pulverized moons into beautiful rings of ruin. I have snuffed out stars to improve the harmony of the constellations. Think of the monuments I can make for you. I promise you everything. All I ask is death. These are the names of the traitors.
The Bodyguard. Lictor Sheotet, the Emperor's protector.
Sheotet the Uncleft, my eternal companion, my shield, and my trust. Whatever good I did, he owns a piece of it, for I did it all under his protection. How many bullets he took for me, how many poisons and piercing thoughts. When I spoke to the people at Daos and told them I had repossessed the wealth and plunder of the Praetorian elite, it was Sheotet who stood by my side. The legions could have bombed our hides to leather, but he stood. He loved me through all the hard times. Oh, friend, how could my happiness turn you against me? How could you grow disgusted with my joy and revelry? How bitter to lose a friend because your friendship was made only of shared pain. On the dark day, Sheotet led the soldiers into my house. Sheotet let the soldiers plunder my collections, feast on my larders, and shoot down those who tried to save me. Sheotet said he was doing this in the name of the man I'd once been. But I knew he was jealous of the emperor I'd become. Sheotet must die. He's a bodyguard, centuries old and always vigilant. He has only one weakness. He will stand and fight. He doesn't know how to run. Make him feel like he's protecting something, and he'll battle to end. Without me, what has Sheotet to protect? Why, brave adventurer, he's like you. He does love his guns.
The Scientist. Freeborn Otzot. Scion Savant.
Centuries after we destroyed the Scion's clairvoyant Oxa machine, word had reached me that it had been rebuilt on the moon of Bran. The Evocate General sent her ships to bomb the moon. In my imperial forgiveness, I stopped her ship. I asked myself, who but a true genius could reconstruct the Oxa? Who but a scion who craved the Oxa's power to see the unseen? Surely we could use that mind. I invited the builder to join me at a fete in her honor. She was called Otzot, freeborn scion, and she glowed with the power of her thoughts. She said, "Is this not Callus's new empire? An empire of achievement? Can't the scions grow fat in thought, as you grow fat in power?" I said, You have a deal. I name you Imperial Dreamer, and you will have all that you need. All of us are stronger when we join hands in song. Cabal and Scion, Sindhu and Clipped, Arcborn and all the others. If only I could have sensed her thoughts, as she so ably sensed mine. When I moved to free the indentured Scions, I threatened Otzot's superior status as a freeborn. She joined the conspiracy against me. She used the Oxa to transmit messages in secret. The military's plans for their coup. Otzot must die. She can sense the hostility and focus of an assassin. Somehow you must reach her undetected. Approach her, enjoy, and trust as I once did. Then you have hope.
The Celebrant. Edile Moly Imoli. The Everjoy.
Moly the Everjoy, chief of festivals. He named himself for the grand, wallowing flats of Moly myth, where bathers snack on floating oysters, and the rising tide carries sweet flowers to tickle the hide. As those waters soothe the body, so Moly of Moly soothed my empire. How the children loved his holidays! How could a year go by without the tusking challenges, or the Resignation Day championships, or the qualifiers of the all-imperial whale kayaking? If only Moly hadn't soothed the people after my exile. If only he'd let them rise up in rage. But that's Moly, isn't it? My brave champions. He just can't bear to see the people angry. Unhappiness leads to uprising, and uprising leads to bloodshed, and few know this. Moly was once the Colossus of Bruenth. As a loyal soldier of the old corrupt Praetorate, he drove the Republicans into the sea. He massacred innocent citizens for the crime of supporting me. He renounced war forever and devoted himself to joy and revelry as Edile. Oh, Moly, what happiness you brought to us all! Now, the Everjoy celebrates with false happiness. He paints a smiling face on the grim legionary helm. Moly Imoli must die. Let his death come on a day he himself invented.
The General. Advocate General Amun Arath. Primus of all legions.
My dear companion, let me confess this. To know true joy, one must also experience true sorrow. I am sorry for Amun Arath, the worst mistake I ever made. In ages past, the Emperor ruled alongside the Praetorate, the degenerate and venal military aristocracy. The legions made an iron wall around them, and the people suffered so the legions could grow. I cast down the Praetorate. I gave the legions the right to speak as citizens, but I still needed armies, and armies need a leader. So I chose a combat veteran to serve as Advocate General. I thought I could show Amun the great works and delights of our Cabal, and thus teach her that war is only a way of protecting happiness. But she would say to me, the war is all there is. All this, the crowds, the triumphal architecture, the gardens in the sky, everything I'd built. This is just logistical support. I watched her. I wasn't a fool. But when at last she betrayed me, she acted through a simple consul and his protege. Damnation upon the name of Ghaul. Amun-Arath would consign my people to an eternity of fear and strife. She would pillage and tax my people in the name of their protection, and yet it will be the soldiers that she protects. Amun-Arath must die. Her flagship's hull is adamant. Her weapons crack planets, and she stands ever vigilant. For Amun sees terror all around her. Machines who can eat her worlds. Barbarians who corrode her frontiers. Wizards who thirst for her soul. And worse. Amun is afraid of the outside. See that her doom comes from within.
The Confidant, Ishtar of Phantor.
Oh, sweet Ishtar, who sold me teas. In the first days of my great purge against the Praetorate, we moved the capital to Torobatl to be near the people. Every day I would go out to parade myself in public view, buying in the markets and gifting to the poor, so that all would know I was unintimidated and still of vigorous appetite. At the end of my route, I would stop by Ishtar's cart to sniff at his baskets of tea. He'd listen to my troubles, who I'd offended among the housekeepers, where my growth ached, and how my allergies reacted to dry plains airs. In all things, an emperor must be excessive. With Ishtar, I was excessive in my trust. And my prices, how well I paid him for the petals I used in the nectar. Ishtar was a poor businessman, and simple. But he never shed a word, I said. I am told he still sets up his tea cart on the same corner. I am told that Ishtar from Phantor sells his tea to a clique of the Dominus's general staff, soldiers who tease him with the nickname Imperial Informant, as if he sends word to me in exile. His teas have found popularity at official wallowings. He has swelled up with growth, which happens usually when someone feels they're smaller than their status deserves. He goes on as if he has forgotten our friendship, as if nothing has changed. Poor Ishtar must die. Give him opiates, let him die of contentment. I cannot bear to imagine the tyrants pouring their poison into his ear. I cannot let them have him. Poor Ishtar. He breaks my heart. I trust him so.
My daughter, Keitel, the Princess Imperial.
Oh, beloved, what have you done? I only wanted an heir who would love what I love. Sweet air and song and the grand work of architects. Feasts and ecstasies, worlds of delight. Are these things not best? Was I inattentive, child? No, I was not. But the more I tried to show you what I loved, the more you turned away. First, those games of war and conquest that you played with the moon. Then, the pressure armor you took to wearing at home, as if the palace were an alien world and the revels toxic. I was so happy when you became a star pilot. I thought you'd see our great Cabal in all its glory and variety and understand the joy of peace. But when you returned to Torobatl, you would hide away with the moon, whispering about threats that gathered on the frontier. I could have stopped the coup. You alone knew of my special arrangement. But when I raced to my throne to give the signal, you were there. You sat on my throne with the signal in your fist. And when I reached out to beg, you crushed the bone in your gauntlet. Father, you said, I will not be weak. You mistook my joy for weakness. You understood nothing who I am. So, my dear daughter must die. Only in flight is she ever happy. Only when she's happy can she be reached. I could never reach her. Perhaps you will.
The Consul.
How small must a man be to seek greatness in the shadow of others? How pitiful the man who grazes up a great soul and cowers behind it. I will not dignify this leech with a name. Think of him as a roach who scurried away from the ruin of the old Praetorate. He'd grown fat on the scraps they fed him, the wealth and influence and favor. And when I took his scraps away to enrich my throne and inspire my people, he wanted them back. Like any roach, this consul has a low cunning. He found the perfect vessel to carry his poison, a lonely, crippled orphan child. Into that child, he poured his jealousy, his cruelty, and his desire to see the great brought low. Imagine his venomous whispers. Look at how happy they are. Look at how they revel and thrive, while we crack our hides in the filth and pine for days of fear and gunfire. Had the child only escaped him, had little Ghaul only crawled off the heap where he was found, so much might have been saved. How terrible the man who sees an orphan as a hollow weapon, and who loads that orphan with the munitions of his revenge. How pathetic the man who wishes only to be a fat parasite again. The vile consul, must die. I sentence him to death by his own weapons.
Ghaul, the Dominus.
At last, the arch-traitor. Let me tell you a story from the Oxa machine. Once upon a time, a small people lived on a dangerous world. By nature, they were petty and fearful. But they strove to be better, and together they overcame their fear. Unto these people came a king, who said, "We are surrounded by enemies, we are weak and frail, but I have an answer. Eat these larvae, my people, and with their strength, we will rise up." Whenever anyone protested the king said, "Are you working with our enemies? No? Then why are you afraid of our strength?" Thus, the king led the great people into slavery to their fear. Ghaul will do the same. The Praetorate chose Ghaul to overthrow me, but they could not master him, for he had a fearsome strength. They tried to control him, to temper and delay his coup. Now he drags them forward by their own reins. Anyone can be great, Ghaul says, if they work their hardest. But what he means is no one can be great except in the way I approve. He says I was born to luxury and corruption. I say he was made only to fear and hate. Whose universe would you choose to live in? I ask you. Ghaul's miserable slog? Ghaul's age of closed fists? Or my world of plenty and delight? Do not mistake my joy for weakness. Oh, just one. I fight to make a haven in a bloody cosmos. Ghaul fights so that he can keep fighting forever. He has refused the title of Emperor, although some of his soldiers call him so. He says there will be no more emperors. I am the last emperor. The epitome, the true Cabal. The Dominus must die. To the one who kills Ghaul, I offer an audience before my throne.
Should you succeed,
Those are the names of the traitors. May I never hear those names again. Not until the day when you, O brave supplicant, come to claim your reward. And such reward, I promise that your name will be envied even in the bright heart of the galaxy, where the stars are thick as honey. Upon my ship, I have prepared a welcome befitting an Emperor's champion. I have baths and gardens, arenas and halls, arsenals of arms and armor, libraries of legends and documents, specimens, treasures, beasts to slay, games to quicken the heart or stimulate the circuitry, or whatever you please. But most of all, I have prepared tests. for I offer to the worthy a place at my side. I say this to you, O champion mine. I say it from the heart. There are those who would bargain away their souls just to live a little longer. I am not them. Life must be worth living. Life must be lovely and delicious and enviably sweet. Nothing has ever lived that will not die. So what matters is how we use our time. I will gather the mighty to protect my empire. An empire of hard-working scientists and clever engineers. Where there is war, legions of my citizen soldiers will bring peace. Where there is hurt, my armada of golden ships will bring hope. And when greater powers intrude on my domain, I will greet them as their sovereign. For in my exile, I have plumbed the secret places of the cosmos. Even my grand Cabal is only a single tooth in the jaws of time. The universe is strange beyond reckoning and dangerous beyond courage. I have voyaged beyond the edge of reason into the dominion of cold screams. I have seen our future written in the ruins of ancient fortress walls. I have gathered up the moon-sized bones that tumble on the precipice of ancient singularities, and I have tossed them to scry our fate. When everything has been taken from you, nothing remains to you. And when you roar into nothing, nothing sometimes answers. So when you succeed, I invite you to walk in my garden, and to wash yourself in my pools, and to test your might in my arenas. At the end of the game, I just may await you, with treasure and with opportunity. For our work is not yet done. No, my champion. My work is not yet done. Emperor Callus.
Assassinations. Sheotet's ship lay smashed and burning on the ground. A few meters away, Sheotet himself crawled from a pod. Jarrus jumped lightly from his own ship, sent it rocketing back into low orbit with a tap to his nav gauntlet. God's will had done its part. Now Jarrus must finish him. Jarrus raised a pistol, another of Callus's gifts, and emptied its clip. Sheotet heaved and jerked as black pressure gel spouted from his armor, but he did not fall. He roared, blood and saliva spattered the ground, and charged. Jarrus holstered the pistols. He waited until Sheotet was nearly on top of him before activating the energy blade. A gargling roar, a spray of pressure gel, and it was over. Jarrus's fingers trembled as he summoned God's will again. In the cockpit, Callus's face appeared.
My heart swells with pride. This drink is in your honor.
Roll gathered his cloak around him tightly as he pushed his way through the teeming marketplace. all around him, Cabal stumbled and pushed their way towards the celebration. No one seemed to question his identity as a foreign merchant, but his heart still raced. Rull thought about the mission that Emperor Callus had given him.
I'm sending you to the Cabal homeworld, Rull. There's a celebration, and you are to be a bearer of my gifts. The finest wines and spirits the universe has to offer.
Rull was disappointed. He wanted to bring down great beasts, not assassinate old Cabal aristocrats.
Oh, Rull, don't fret. I promised you a warrior's paradise, and you shall have it. The gifts will buy you access to some of my former friends. I haven't spoken to them in some time. And well, I'd like them to know I haven't forgotten.
He arrived at the estate of Ishtar, former friend and confidant of the exiled Emperor Callus. It took surprisingly little to convince the guards to grant him entrance. The Cabal must truly be crazy for the wine he offered up as a gift. It was a day of celebration, after all. Who knows how deep into their cups these guards were? Once inside, he spotted his mark. Rull wasted no time. He removed the sheath from the end of his staff to reveal a spear tip. Ishtar fell backwards and attempted to crawl away as his guards were skewered. Rull grabbed a cask of wine and pounced on the terrified old creature, pouring the wine down his throat. Ishtar choked and sputtered and flailed helplessly. Rull delivered his message as promised. Emperor Callus has not forgotten you. Rull didn't stop pouring until he felt Ishtar go limp. Rull was covered in the sticky black and violet of Cabal blood and wine. He dropped Ishtar's body to the floor with a soft thud. Just then, Moly, the Celebrant, entered the courtyard. When Rull realized that his second target had carelessly walked alone into a secluded space in the midst of a massive celebration on the Cabal homeworld, he thought, perhaps this is the warrior's paradise that Emperor Callus promised. Rull activated his staff's secondary configuration and fired a harpoon into Moly's exposed flank. The barbs pierced deep, and the giant beast of a Cabal let out a monstrous howl. Blind with pain, he began to run, dragging Rull behind like a harpooned whale dragging a ship. The honored Celebrant Moly ran through the streets of the Cabal homeworld on Celebration Day, howling in agony and dragging Rull behind. It was such a spectacle that no one was sure exactly what was happening, or what to do about it. Moly ran all the way to Dominus Ghaul's ceremony, and right up the steps before collapsing at his lord's feet. Rull realized that he now faced a choice. Try to escape, or finish the job. Rull yanked out the harpoon before shoving it through Moly's neck. He had just enough time to pull off his helmet and smile in Ghaul's face before he was killed. Truly, Emperor Callus had delivered a warrior's paradise. Statesman Thaul ran, and the Fulminator followed him. He was a minor diplomat who had played a part in the coup against the Emperor. She wasn't certain of the details. The social dynamics of organics were difficult to grasp, and she found them consistently irrelevant. He had no idea she was still there. He thought he had outrun her, but the Archborn knew that bipeds rarely look up. She hovered far above her target, specific limiters on her armor disabled so that Arch could flow freely and lift her to the heavens. Below, the statesman had chosen a brightly lit street that led to a dead end on the left turn in front of him. She descended. The charred husk that was statesman Ghaul had revealed several things before he expired. He had mistaken her for a warrior of the light, one of their Stormbringers, who apparently bore a resemblance to the Fulminator. She wished to see one of them. No biped was ever anything like her. She felt something like regret when Ghaul said his people were mobilizing to annihilate them. She made other reports to Callus, pertaining to the locations of Red Legion armories and fleet movements. He only cared about one. Now that the military was in power, in Callus's absence, military parades on Cabal worlds were commonplace. Ghaul's flagship would take part in one such celebration, on Resignation Day, in the fringes of the Sol system, in honor of a mythic Praetor. That was where the Shadows would kill the Dominus. The Fulminator noticed a difference in her fellow Shadows as they prepared for war. The usual bickering, fostered by the multi-species makeup of Callus's Enforcer group, vanished overnight as they faced the task they had gathered to complete: kill Dominus Ghaul. Callus had recruited them through bribery or promises of wealth and resources for their homeworlds. None of them expected to survive their mission. The might of the Red Legion had grown vast. This acceptance brought them together. The Fulminator didn't understand or care. As long as Callus left the Archborn to their interstellar conduits, she would do what she had done since the day she came aboard the Leviathan: destroy the enemies of the Emperor. Jarrus left God's will behind for his final mission. He needed a ship big enough to carry his fellow Shadows to Ghaul, and with enough internal shielding and anti-impact padding to ensure the plan they had developed would succeed. Under Jarrus's control, the ship dodged, weaved, and carved a path through the Red Legion. His fingers flipped switches, rapidly changing the displays on the monitors surrounding the cockpit. In the hold, the Shadows waited. Jarrus aligned the ship's trajectory towards the Dominus' ship. The plan was simple.
"My dear Jarrus,"
the Emperor had said,
"we must deliver the Shadows to the Dominus at any cost."
Jarrus knew what this meant. For him, the trip was one way. But that was alright, so long as Ghaul's was too. Jarrus's fighter soared like a blade into the throat of the Dominus' command ship. They hoped it wouldn't matter. Jarrus died on impact. The Shadows burst forth from his shattered vessel, the Fulminator leading the charge. Every limiter on her armor was undone. The unrelenting fury of her being loosed onto the bridge would permanently disable her. She would still exist, but couldn't anchor herself or manipulate anything around her. She would scatter to the winds. Navigation displays exploded in a shower of sparks as she passed. The storm she had become reached an apex of intensity. and she reached out to scores of Cabal and swallowed them, and she felt them die. She wrapped Ghaul in her light, enervated him in bursts of flaring arc. She was fading. He would die. Wouldn't he?
The day the shadows died, Veltrox sat in a perch high above the fighting, among a sea of glittering rounds. There was a Red Legion corpse for each shell on the engineering deck of Ghaul's ship below. When everything in her field of vision was dead, she took aim to the enemy's airborne rounds, the ones meant for the shadows still in the fight. She had hit several by the time the Red Legion managed to fill the airshaft around her with a neurotoxin. I promised Secrus a greater power than the favor of your traveler. He died at Ghaul's hands, still wondering what that could possibly be. In later days, my disguise could no longer fool him as it fooled others. His skill in designing and modifying mechanized life forms was unparalleled, and he made it clear he knew I was not what I appeared to be. I made it clear that, either way, he would continue to serve. And I think he guessed that my form and my strength are inextricably linked. Ghaul fought and killed Valisnor last, only after her bladed shield took the heads of 300 of his soldiers. I will miss her, and regret that she did not live to see the coming end. So few of us will.
Empress, Chapter 3, Assassin. Keitel felt the assassin's eyes on her back before she heard the words. "Your father sends his regards," they croaked. She calmly turned. The intruder was not Cabal. They wore a strange, sleek, armored suit. Some off-world species unaccustomed to the atmosphere, no doubt. But her father's influence on it was obvious. He did so favor white, purple, and gold.
He can keep them,
Keitel said. The assassin's gun, pointed at her chest, glowed with a purple light that distorted the air around it. "He sent a message for you." Keitel lunged, crashing her shoulder into the assassin. They fired their weapon, and void energy seared through Keitel's bicep. Undeterred, she slammed the assassin to the ground, clutching their throat in one hand and making a fist with the other. She cocked her arm back. Her reflection in the assassin's helmet stared back at her, furious, unblinking, curious.
Go on then,
she snarled, her fist looming.
The message.
The assassin struggled. "You are a child in a general's costume," they spat. "None of the vision of your father, none of the drive or the strength of the one they call Dominus." Something sharp penetrated Keitel's pressure suit and slipped up against her ribs. "You will not be remembered." Spurred to action, Keitel rolled to unseat the blade. The assassin followed and raised the void weapon to her head. Keitel slammed her hand over the barrel. Energy shot through her palm as she ripped the gun away. She grabbed the assassin's helmet with her bloody fingers and slammed their head against the ground. Once, twice, 3 times. The shield began to crack. 4, 5, 6 times. She let the helmet thud against the ground. Her contorted reflection now stared back.
Is he listening?
Keitel boomed.
My father. Tell him I will come for him. Tell him there's no distance that will save him from me.
The assassin gasped and wheezed. When they recovered their voice, they hissed, "Killing me will not stop the end from coming. My gods have foretold." Keitel hesitated for a brief moment before her good hand clenched into a fist and slammed into the assassin's visor, shattering her reflection as well as the assassin's skull. She sat back in the wreckage, panting, covered in strange, viscous blood.
Your gods are dead,
she said to no one. The Red Wall. We have now caught up with the events of the original Destiny 2 campaign, The Red Wall. Shortly after the failed assassination attempts, Ghaul and the Consul arrive in Sol with the Red Legion and catch the forces of the last city completely off guard. They come prepared with a cage for the Traveller that has the ability to contain its light. This technology was based on discoveries the Cabal Skyburners Legion made aboard Oryx's Dreadnought in Destiny 1's Taken King era, and by being able to cut the Guardians off from their connection to the light, the Red Legion have a unique tactical advantage, which is probably best seen in the opening cutscenes.
How do we come back from this?
You don't. Welcome to a world without light.
As the cage activates, both Guardian and Ghost collapse.
Guardian, something's wrong.
The Guardian pulls their Ghost close to protect them.
Do not look at me, creature.
Ghaul strikes the Guardian.
You are weak, undisciplined, cowering behind walls. You're not brave. You've merely forgotten the fear of death. Allow me to reacquaint you. Your kind never deserved the power you were given. I am Ghaul, and your light is mine.
Later, Ghaul looks out at the caged traveller from his ship with the Consul in attendance.
Do you see, traveler, all that I have done? Grace me with your light. Take your place at the center of my empire. See me, and the Red Legion will be your true guardians.
Dominus, the city is secure. Those who fled are being hunted, and those foolish enough to remain have been executed. Victory, as with all things, is yours to claim.
This victory is as much yours as mine, old friend.
All that remains is the completion of the cage around this great machine. Then we may begin the extraction of its power and put it to its rightful use.
They call it the Traveler.
I would contend that other civilizations may be more precise in their naming. Its functions can be controlled and exploited, as we have so clearly proven.
yet they believe it to be a god.
Dominus. Ghaul. We have spent our lives, you and I, working to reshape our society, reforge our people, rebuild an empire nearly destroyed by Callus's greed and corruption. There is nothing in this universe greater than you. The Red Legion will have that machine's power. You will be called Emperor. What more would the Dominus have?
I would have words with my guest.
From the ceiling, a device opens, and it reveals the speaker held suspended in restraints.
So you're the one who speaks for the Traveler.
The opening act of the Red War campaign sees the Guardian reconnecting to the light through a shard of the Traveler in the EDZ that was cast off during the collapse. Sometime after this, we get another scene of Ghaul interrogating the speaker, whose broken mask suggests he has endured some degree of torture in the interim.
It would save us both a lot of time if you would just kill me.
For one who calls himself Speaker, you have remarkably little to say. We've learned that one of your Guardians has reconnected to the light. You say you have no power over the Traveler, yet... This... Help me understand, Speaker.
The light lives in all places, in all things. You can block it, even try to trap it, but the light will find its way. And the Traveler will protect itself.
The Traveler. For years I have studied it. The worlds it has touched. Its power over life and death. We are not so different, your Traveler and I.
You are nothing like the Traveler. Nothing. You think you have power, control. I know your kind. You started small. You will end small.
If the Traveler truly has chosen humanity of its own free will, then there is no reason I should not reach inside, tear out the light for myself, and leave this system in ashes.
Only those the Traveler chooses will be reborn in the light.
Yes. This I know. This is why I have claimed your planet, and why you still live. The Traveler will choose me, Speaker. And you are going to tell me how.
Some more time passes as the Guardian rallies the scattered vanguard on Titan, Nessus, and Io, before we get to see Ghaul once more push the speaker for a way for Ghaul to obtain the light.
Tell me again, Speaker, what makes your Guardians worthy of the light? What is the price of such power and immortality?
Devotion. Self-sacrifice. Death.
Death. Explain.
Devotion inspires bravery. Bravery inspires sacrifice. Sacrifice leads to death. So, feel free to kill yourself.
Devotion. Sacrifice. I was born an outcast. A runt. As is custom with the Cabal, I was cast aside and left for dead. I was taken in by an old scholar himself, disgraced, who saw in me something redeemable. He raised me, taught me, trained me, and in return, I would become a vehicle for his revenge against an empire that failed him, that failed itself. Rejection, ridicule, torment. It made me stronger. I gave everything to win not just acceptance, but glory. Beneath my mask, Speaker, is the face of devotion and sacrifice. I will not take the light by force. To do so would be to admit failure, and I never fail. Now, do you see why I will be chosen?
I see now. I see all that you have done.
The Consul enters.
Our operation on the Jovian Moon was a success. Once the cage is complete, we will have everything we need to begin the process of extracting the light. Dominus, everything we've worked for is here, for the taking. All that remains is your word.
No, this is not the way, old friend.
But it is the way. The only way.
Not for me.
The campaign continues to play out as the Guardian prepares for an all-out assault on Ghaul's flagship following the deactivation of the Cabal's superweapon, the Almighty, before we return to Ghaul in his chambers.
Ghaul, the enemy attacks the city, and the Almighty is lost.
Lost? Explain yourself.
Laid waste by the very same Guardian that somehow managed to reclaim its power and has been humiliating our forces throughout this cursed system. You would know this if you hadn't been wasting your time communing with a machine and the creature who claims to speak with.
Take care of your tone, Consul.
My tone? Huh. We will fail in our mission to secure this power and deliver our people. For the first time in the glorious history of the Red Legion, fail because of you and your preoccupations. Look at your traveler, Dominus. The cage is complete. The time is now. Claim what is rightfully yours and take this power.
Ghaul paces toward the speaker.
Tell me, Speaker, what more does the Traveler want of me?
Ghaul, I speak for the Traveler. I never said it spoke to me.
Off-screen, the Consul kills the speaker.
This fixation is over. You have already been chosen, not by some inert machine, but by me! I chose you, the day I found you! Remember who you are, what you are. You are Cabal! Cabal wait for nothing. You will take the light. Do what you swore, and give me the vengeance you promised! Look at me, student. Look at me!
The Consul stamps on the speaker's mask. Ghaul's face contorts in rage and he throttles the Consul.
I will do what I swore, old friend. I am Ghaul, and I will take the light.
Having killed the Consul, Ghaul stands alone, looking towards the Traveler. The Guardian eventually confronts Ghaul, who is siphoning light from the Traveler to empower himself. In the Guardian's attempt to defeat him, Ghaul draws deeper upon the light until he manifests as a huge being constructed purely of the light.
Traveler, do you see me now? I am immortal. A god. You have failed. Witness the dawning of a new age.
In this moment, the Traveler breaks its cage. Ghaul reaches towards it and is obliterated. The Leviathan. In the aftermath of the Red War, the Guardians investigate signs of a new Cabal presence in the vicinity of Nessus.
Hey, you two. My scouts picked up a weird Cabal signal coming from a ship that's definitely not Red Legion. Some new guy giving orders. He's got the Red Legion running around like errand boys on Nessus. Last time the Cabal had a management shakeup, they burned down our house. Let's see what they're up to. Bring guns.
Well, we always have at least 3. The Legion is pulling schematics of Nessus itself from the confluxes. Atmospheric, geologic, and tectonic data. They want it all. I'm not sure why. Okay, this might explain it. Let's see. The Legion is helping their unnamed leader identify mineral-rich deposits on Nessus for consumption? Well, that can't be right. Okay, I'm going to read this and you pretend like I understand. The Cabal want to grind Nessus into glorious dust fit for royalty. It's more environmental data. Just some logistical planning so they can prime their ship to eat the planet. This new Cabal leader might have a few screws loose. I mean, they don't have a ship that big. Do they? Transmitting now. Cade, I'm picking up a planet-wide broadcast. Red Legion's 7th Company has failed to secure Vex data. Their invitation to join the Loyalist regime is hereby rescinded. There's more. The rest of you still have a chance to prove yourselves. I offer you a life of opulence.
Opulence? Oh, I could go for some opulence right now.
I'm in. This gets weirder. They've analyzed the planetoid soil and what might happen if it's combined with something called royal nectar. One more cluster. Great work. Both confluxes linked. Just keep them away while I read this recipe for converting Nessus soil into a purified royal wine? What are the Cabal doing? I grabbed everything I could and shut down the confluxes. The Red Legion won't get any of the data this new leader wanted them to secure.
They're gonna be so mad! I love it!
Serves them right. Let's get this to the Vanguard before I have to defrag. The Legion wanted every byte of data the Vex have on Nessus. All I ask is you return to my loving embrace. Ew. Emperor Callus has spoken.
Ooh, wait, Emperor? As in Cabal Emperor? Okay, opulence later. Ikora now. Ikora! Great job today, guys.
Boy, he left in a hurry. I wonder what that was about.
As the ones who finally killed Ghaul, the Guardians are formally invited to the Leviathan for an audience with Callus, subject to passing a few tests.
Prove yourself worthy, and I will grant you the means to true power. Enter the Gauntlet. You're the evening's entertainment. The gardens are beautiful, but watch your step. You never know where a beast might lurk. You're tense. Why don't you relax in the bars? Join my soldiers in their revelry. They won't mind.
After braving the Gauntlet, the Royal Pools and the Pleasure Gardens, they finally come upon Callus himself. He is normally sort of ambivalent towards the Guardian's presence until one of them shoots a goblet from his hand, upon which the fight ensues. During this fight, Callus, in concert with his Scion Chancellors, will pull some Guardians into a nightmare realm, and as the fight progresses, it becomes apparent that the Guardians are fighting a robot rather than Callus himself.
Everything you know is a lie. There is a truth beyond what your people and your speaker have told you. I can take you to that truth if you seek me out. These gifts are a reminder of my words. Emperor Callus has spoken.
During the events of the Curse of Osiris expansion, Guardians would be once again summoned to the Leviathan. This time due to it accidentally bringing a Vex Mind aboard, which the Guardians defeat in the Eater of Worlds raid lair.
The Leviathans of voracious Eater are not very picky, as the Vex can attest. Oh, their flames are choking my beautiful machine! Well done! But that Vex Mind was the only thing keeping Leviathan's throat shut!
Guardian down!
I won't allow your death to be so trivial. Nor to have to use the planted Ghaul in such decisive fashion. You were magnificent today. You gorge yourself on danger. You embrace death. When the end comes, I know you'll embrace that too. And believe me, it will be far more enjoyable to face it together. Reflect on this, and know that tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Finally, during the Warmind expansion, a Red Legion commander, Val Kaur, would attempt to seize the Leviathan from Callus in the Spire of Stars raid. The entry, The Emperor's Envy, lays out his perspective.
Callus, that conniving coward, spawn of a war beast. Betrayal was not Ghaul's gravest sin against our former emperor. Callus may proclaim otherwise, but what he truly loathed was Ghaul's ambition. Of Callus's vices, of which there are plenty, envy is his greatest. The Red Legion came to this wretched system to claim the Traveler, and it was within our grasp. We did it not for personal pride, but for the collective glory of our people, for Torobatl. If Callus possessed an iota of dignity, he would have helped Ghaul against the Guardians instead of gallivanting around the system. This was his moment to redeem himself. Instead, he proved himself the traitor we knew him to be. No more, I will take the Leviathan for the Red Legion. The Great Machine is a weapon of the Cabal, and if Callus holds no allegiance to his people, then he is not worthy to wield it.
Greetings, my young guardians. The time has come once again to prove your mettle. Ghaul and his Red Legion cast-offs believe the Leviathan is theirs to claim. Should they succeed, our relationship would need modification. Though it must be done to ensure your continued favor in my eyes. Let him die! Excellent, my young ones. You have indeed grown fat with strength and power. You have again curried my favor. Perhaps soon you shall take your place at my side and know true power.
And with Valkor slain, the Guardians' attentions would be turned towards new threats in the Forsaken expansion and its subsequent seasons. But it was far from the last time Callus would invite them back to the Leviathan. Chapter 3: A Crown of Sorrow.
Savathun, she nearly had me. Had I not birthed Ghaul, had he not donned the crown, I would be lost.
After Warmind, we would have little interaction with Callus or the Cabal for a while, but that would all change with Season of Opulence. Here, we discover that Callus has not been completely idle in that interim, and he has got caught up in one of Savathun's schemes, and so reaches out to his favourite Guardian for aid once more. Confessions. Entry 9. By the mind of Match, Shadow Counselor to the true Emperor, upon the Leviathan, at rest in the place of endings. I thank my ancestors for the fullness of my cup. I thank my Emperor for granting me purpose. Without a secret troubling my mind, I've neglected this journal. I come back to it today in good humour, moved by my Emperor's own amusement. A party of the Guardians that Callus entertains have arrived with a set of various squabbling demands. A starship, a precise description of their darkness, a list of stars the Traveler has visited, a treaty with the Cabal Empire for the defense of Earth, a chance to see Callus in his true form, repairs to certain weapons that they feel have gone askew, so much and so forth. Callus loves these Guardians so. He loves them for their energy, their liveliness, their willingness to do whatever he asks in hope of a reward. He loves it when they dance. He loves the great heroic sulks so many of them enter when they become dissatisfied with their work. Seek joy, he urges them. And he loves his Guardians because he knows he can teach them a lesson they cannot ever learn themselves. They are as Callus once was, unaware of their finitude. Callus will teach them. They are immortal, but they will all be gone one day, like my Emperor, like me. That appointed day is coming soon. All of this will vanish as surely as childhood vanishes from the grown. And when the things the Guardians strive for are lost, their power, their future, their drive to do more and more, they will understand that what matters is the joy they found with their companions, not the arsenals and ambitions they gathered. All things will end. All things done for the sake of some future greatness will come to nothing. In our final tallies, only the things that brought us joy and meaning will count. And because I trusted Callus, I have found joy. I have made the choices that will let me die in peace. Bless the spirits from the chalice. Bless the day they poured our souls into us. And bless my Emperor, who will lead us to the end. Stolen intelligence. Passivity. Access restricted. Decryption key ORN 326. Report number 59. Cabal. Leviathan. Agent True 135. Subject Sitrep. 1. Live fire training exercises continue at the active incursion site on the Leviathan. No further raid class operations have been documented since the unauthorized intervention against VIP 4044 at the explicit invitation of VIP 3801. This agent still believes that the Vanguard should institute stronger measures to prevent rogue teams from carelessly rushing to the aid of enemy VIPs, particularly given 3801's documented history of solicitous behavior and the tendency of our warriors to rush slack-jawed toward free gifts. VIP 4044 could have been a useful catspaw in the destruction of 3801. We should not have intervened. 2. Related to the above, 3801's aggressive propaganda campaign appears to have been successful. Despite 3801's recent inactivity, sentiment polls captured in the tower at regular intervals over the last several months indicate that he has successfully swayed a significant percentage of the Red War cohort to believe that he may be a potential ally. Given our history with the Cabal, as well as the events of the Red War itself, this is shocking, and perhaps attributable to a case of mass traumatic bonding. It is my strong recommendation that the Vanguard pursue a re-education curriculum before 3801 invites any Guardians of the city to defect to his service, a possibility which we have documented in multiple previous reports. 3. Nessus continues to remain stable, likely due to Vex machinoforming. 4. The Awoken Armada continues regular shows of force. The Leviathan remains non-hostile. 5. Our agents continue to closely monitor inbound and outbound traffic to and from the Leviathan. As yet, we have not been able to observe any non-Guardian transport, providing additional evidence for the fact that the ship is either a self-contained ecosystem, which has no paracausal exits, or that it possesses some kind of internal Stargate network by which occupants may invisibly enter and exit. As the Cabal have no documented history of such Stargates, we are inclined to believe the former. 6. In summary, there is no real news. However, This agent is inclined to regard this conspicuous passivity with suspicion rather than relief, and would urge Vanguard leadership to consider exploratory excursions in the coming months. Message ends. Am I to cast a shadow? Galron knelt before his Emperor in a chamber of gold. Every surface reflected a resplendent sheen that blinded him.
What is this place?
He asked.
Many things.
Callus replied, lounging with his cheek in his palm.
This chamber once held an Archborn, the only one of her kind to leave the interstellar conduits of her people. It is the place where Valus Nor earned her shield in trial by combat. Shadows were cast here. History made. Am I to cast a shadow? Yes. You were bred to be a sorrow bearer. I seek a hive commander, but those are not so readily available. So I made you. The Council says the hive cannot be contained. They worry.
Callus raised an eyebrow.
Who among them? Councillors Raul and Valoran.
The Emperor shook the golden chamber with his guffaw.
Only a few hours old, and already your words have killed two.
Galran pondered what his Emperor could mean.
I will enjoy you,
Callus said, and keyed a hidden control on the armrest of his divan. The ceiling shrieked as it opened like an eye. Galran craned his neck to stare as two hovering councillors descended with a massive plated helm from the vast iris above. He could hear a litany of voices shouting down at him from inside the thing as it slowly descended. He thought they sounded like warnings, but there were no discernible words in the speech.
What is that?
He asked his Emperor. Callus finished the royal nectar in his chalice before belching,
Your crown.
Galran thought he could glimpse a faint violet glow on the inside of the helm as it drew nearer.
Isn't it beautiful?
Callus asked, as the voices echoing from the helm grew louder.
No.
Galran replied. He thought he should run. He tried to stand, but he found that he could not, rooted to the floor before the Emperor's throne by the will of the councillors.
I do not like this.
Galran said.
This,
said Callus, as the councillors crowned Galran.
is why you were born.
The violet interior filled Galran's vision.
What does it feel like?
Asked the Emperor.
Fear.
Said Galran. Callus must have responded, but Galran couldn't hear him over the cacophony of voices. He suddenly found that he could see through 100 billion eyes, and that he could eat, with teeth enough to consume entire systems. He felt beautiful. After losing control over Galran, Callus, through one of his servant frames, reaches out to the Guardian to ask for assistance.
They're a hive aboard the Leviathan. They are mine, though they don't know it. One of my loyalists controls them. He possesses an artifact of ascendant authority. Unfortunately, Wielding it has cost him his mind. If you two should meet, consider his welcome overstayed, and his riches yours for the taking.
In the Crown of Sorrow raid, Guardians head deep into the Leviathan, manipulating the Witch Queen's blessing bestowed upon Galran's hive in order to assault Galran himself. The Guardians have to work together to dispel Savathun's deceptions and target the real Galran, who, upon death, is released from the Crown of Sorrows. Shadows grips.
You've helped me free the Crown of Sorrow from Galran's poor, decayed mind. My jowls are shivering, and though you are not here, I bellow for you. Such is my adoration for your magnificent act. But now, to send the Scions into the depth of the Crown, analyze it for additional traps. You've worn hive armor before, the hides of both the Taken King and his son. Those did not whisper, did not sap your will. This crown was willing to share power, where the armor of the king left nothing real behind for you to take, because the king takes. The Crown of Sorrow is more charitable, giving, too giving, because what it gives is infection. Galran thought he could overcome it. You saw the result. I thank you for freeing him. He's in a better place now. A place we're all going when the Black Edge closes in on us.
Shadows robes.
The crystalline entities you met in your battles with Galran the Sorrowbearer. You've seen them before. Sometime during the Red War, just prior to my arrival in the Sol System. You attempted to aid the fire team of the Praxic warlock Tycho III. She and her allies were transmuted by the Hive into crystalline entities of pure void, which you and your ghost exploited to dismantle the Hive ritual taking place. Cold, calculating. It was magnificent. You probably saved Titan, which is just as well. It's a light I would prefer we extinguished along with the rest of Sol. The Witch Queen who crafted that song, that ritual, was behind the Crown of Sorrow. She has infected this plane of existence with a viral language. Perhaps you've encountered her already. Do not heed her words. She shall only lead you astray. When she speaks to you, consider simply reading another text. There are so many to choose from in this system.
Shadows gauntlets.
The Hive left the Crown of Sorrow on one of their war moons, and my shadows waged such a campaign to take it. We did, and we converted it into an Athenaeum world. But the crown was a trap for me. I suspected as much, which is why I did not wear it. After initial tests, my scions determined it was a seeing device of sorts, feeding all sorts of data to someone or something deep in the Ascendant Plane. But seeing devices look both ways, I had to have it, and I had to have someone wear it. Because I believed I could control the Hive through a shadow surrogate. The Hive are not true darkness, not what I saw at the Black Edge, but they would provide an army just the same. Proud Ghaul was bred specifically to bring them under my control.
Shadow's plate.
You've no doubt visited the ritual baths aboard the Leviathan, have you not? If you haven't, you must. And true, it is a place of recreation for my beloved soldiers. But did you know that they are born there? Yes, the joyful axe-wielding ceremonial bathers are but seconds into their lives when you cut them down. They are created from genetic patterns of the most virile martial artists of a bygone Cabal era. And Ghaul, the Sorrow Bearer, was once one of them. I played with his pattern, made certain he would be strong of mind and will as much as body. He had but one purpose: bear the crown of sorrow and make the Hive mine. Imagine my chagrin when his very personality was annihilated within minutes of exposure. Whatever viral language was etched into the crown's interior had taken over. Until you ended him, he belonged to a witch.
Penumbral Bond.
I'll require a shadow of your guardian tribe to transcribe the runes emblazoned inside the Crown of Sorrow. Change them to something more beneficial for Emperor Callus, and disrupt the witch's schemes. Oh, she thinks I can't hear her? Well, I can't hear her words, but her intent, her feeling, I know it, she's here. She means to undermine me with the crown. We shall wear it just the same, as soon as we can fix it. Don't worry about what happened to Ghaul. We've learned since then. We shall find a more suitable host for the crown. Oh, not me. Never me. Your emperor has enough crowns to last 100,000 generations. Perhaps one of your titans would be hearty enough. But the witch is troublesome. I preferred her brother to her. Oryx would have been easy to match. The brute force of the Taken would have been easy to conquer with fat grown from strength. They would have joined my new empire gladly, because their greatest desire is subservience. Alas, one day the witch and I shall crash. What will you do then? You've made a choice before, between the vanguard who raised you and the peasant shell of a man who tempted you with power he barely understands. If you truly care about this system, but the people of your city. You shall help me, Guardian. Wear this bond and proclaim your fealty. It's a promise that you'll work to purify the crown of sorrow in a way only a guardian of your tribe can. As soon as we figure out how, help me. Help me grow fat from strength.
Penumbral Mark. Warlock Orna Mahal stood before the Vanguard in one of the tower's war rooms. We have shadows of Callus to deal with now, the Warlock said, dropping a data tablet in front of Ikora Ray and Commander Zavala. And I am assuming we should let them. Guardians go to where the guns are, and where the fighting is, Zavala said, picking up the tablet and cycling through its holographic projections. Profiles of Guardians in golden loyalist armor. There are only a few shadows of Earth on record. There will be more. Just give them time. Zavala finished with the tablet, set it aside. What would you have me do? He asked. Give me a fire team of veterans. We'll hollow out the Leviathan in a week. Maybe less. Some of them don't trust you, Ikora said, with a small, sad smile. You do, Orna replied. Always, Zavala said quickly. There are veterans who do too, Orna added. So let me pick a unit. We'll find the Emperor. Zavala shook his head. A single machine aboard that thing took an entire fire team to burn down. How do you think we'd get on in open war with Callus? So we're just going to stand idly by? Again? A crescent of lightning flickered between Orna's eyes as if to punctuate her point. He's not an ally, Zavala said slowly. But he's an enemy of the Red Legion, and right now, he's keeping them in check. The Guardians kept them in check, when they kicked the Legion's head in during the war, Orna replied. Callus's influence on the Guardians will collapse under the weight of his lies. Have you met the Drifter? We're not a military, Ikora said finally. What the Guardians do is what they'll do. Every team that engages with Callus reports back. If he makes a wrong move, you'll be on the first strike team out. Orna took her duster off her chair and headed out the door without another word. When it closed, Zavala said, She's not wrong. Her motivations are never wrong, Ikora returned. She'll watch over them for us, whether we ask her to or not. Chapter 4. The Fall of Torobatl.
After losing Torobatl, we cannot lose our honor. It's the only thing we have left.
It is time to finish the Lawbook Empress, discover how the Cabal lost their own homeworld, and set the stage for the seasonal story to come. Heir Apparent. Keitel stands in her war room. Her nation, which she has always loved, reeks of failure. The scent is strong. When she was young, she would watch the feedings in her father's zoological gardens. Live creatures from the lands beyond Torobatl, wounded, left in the middle of the landscaped enclosures. She'd seen had the smell of blood brought the larger, hungrier creatures out of the undergrowth. The same will happen to the Empire if she lets it. But she will not. She won't fail where her father failed. He was led astray by his vices, corrupted by frivolity and pleasure. He was never meant to be emperor. He was too weak. But Ghaul was destroyed by weakness too. His fixation on the machine god was stupid. It embarrasses her to think of him. She has always had a vivid imagination. Ironically, it's her father she can thank for that. All of the stories and songs he made her study, the insufferable plays. But she repurposes that arsenal of thought toward a new goal, imagining a better future for her people. A future where they rule the galaxy once again, where foreign ships fall under their fire and rival nations fall to their knees. This future will be different. This future will be hers. Empress, Chapter 4, Soldiers. Keitel loathed the crawling pace of the court. She despised the tricky voices of courtiers and generals vying for attention and resources. Sorting out their tedious requests was like fetching lost scraping sticks from the bottom of a mud wallow. But one day, a general came to her with a clear complaint.
The stench from Amun Arath's rooms permeates the entire east wing of the palace. My lovers choke on toxic fumes, simply walking through the halls.
Surprised she hadn't heard about it before, Keitel dismissed him with a promise to investigate the Evocate General's chambers. Later that day, she found that the first of Amun's rooms, usually kept tidy with military precision, was changed. Her 2 war tables were covered in papers and tomes unrecognizable to Keitel. The room stank of death and poison. Strange symbols were drawn on the ground in ash. In the far corner of the room, with the restraints they used for captives aboard their prison ships, a living hive thrall was held in suspension, drooling and chattering.
Amun,
Keitel said, astonished.
What's happening here?
Amun turned from one of her war tables, where she studied a book that looked to be bound with mottled flesh.
Princess,
she said, pleased.
Good. I thought to call you, but I've been so engrossed. Come see the future of the Cabal army.
Keitel approached, intent on looking at Amun instead of the thrall.
They don't fear pain,
Amun said. Perverse admiration crept into her voice.
They don't fear death. Soldiers who don't know pain or fear are useless,
Keitel said, eyeing the Evocate General.
It is the knowledge of death and the will to defy it that together breed bravery. You taught me those texts. We must move beyond them,
Amun muttered, watching the thrall tilt its grotesque face in response to their voices.
With each swing of the sword, the universe grows smaller, Keitel. The competition fiercer. If we don't learn a new way, we'll be cut down with the rest.
Her voice went quiet.
We must accept new gods, or we'll perish.
The thrall began to thrash, sudden and violent. Keitel watched.
I am ordering you to step down from the council.
she said, after a long silence. Empress, Chapter 5, New Gods. It was Tarun, one of Keitel's advisors, that alerted her to the spectacle.
In the square,
She said, her deep voice laced with concern.
I've never seen anything like it.
Keitel went immediately. In the central square of Torobatl's weaponsmith district, a bright green flame licked the air. Amun-Arath stood against the blaze, naked but for a waist wrap, in the custody of 2 guards. Her hide was carved with strange, crude symbols. When she saw Keitel arrive, she threw her head back and laughed.
Here comes the Princess Imperial,
She said,
to kneel before our new god.
I am Savathun, whispering. Keitel strode forward.
Let her go.
She told the guards. Reluctant, they did as she asked.
What god, Amun? What heresies have you invented now?
Amun grinned.
The god of war.
She said, and the earth trembled beneath them. But the god of war has planted her armies elsewhere. It is her sister, smiling, that has taken the ear of the war child, Amun-Arath. Keitel stood before Amun in the flickering green light of the fire.
Your obsession is a weakness,
She said.
and a threat to our prosperity. You can't stop it now.
Amun lilted, breathless with delight. Keitel didn't break her stare.
I have no choice but to.
Zivu-Arath, hear me. Amun, chuckling, raised her hands. They glowed. The fire behind her burned higher and chattered like rattling bones.
The war is all there is,
She said. As the chattering reached a fevered pitch, Keitel made a decision. With the lightning-quick reflexes Amun had taught her, she unsheathed the ceremonial sword at her side and ran it through Amun's middle. Amun laughed. You are war, and I conjure you with war and blood. She laughed and laughed and laughed until her mouth began to ooze. Until Keitel, disgusted, pushed her off the sword with her foot. The body tumbled back onto the green blaze. A gift for my favorite sister. As the fire consumed the corpse, a gargantuan portal opened in the sky. Empress, Chapter 6, Battle Song. Smoke rose from the city of Torobatl. The sky was dark with tomb ships and threshers. Strange, spindly towers had sprouted from the ground, infecting the streets and alleyways Keitel had known so well, rendering the landscape alien. Many of the creatures that poured from the tear in the sky had fallen to her missiles, like any other enemy, but their numbers never seemed to dwindle. Their will never seemed to falter. Pinned in the wreckage of a crashed single-pilot fighter, Keitel caught her breath as gel leaked from her suit. She remembered Amun's words. They don't fear pain. They don't fear death. She wondered how she could have let this happen. How could she have been the one to open that door? Because even as she cursed Amun for starting this, Keitel was the one who had finished it. It didn't matter that she'd done it unwillingly and unknowingly. that responsibility was still on her shoulders. She cursed Amun and the Vermin Hive, but more than that, she cursed herself. She was responsible for the destruction of their home. A voice, as loud as thunder, spoke to her, deafening. My home is war. My voice is a battle song. For as long as you have worshipped war, you have worshipped me. I am here to claim my tribute. It is overdue. Empress, Chapter 7, Coronation. At the long table of her council room on the fleeing warship Eligos Lex 5, Keitel sat with her advisors. An ugly panic gripped them.
Their war moons are too powerful,
said Councillor Tarun. The tactical display, where hive ships and war moons floated like innumerable dust specks in space, flickered.
They are not deterred by casualties,
rumbled Kaug.
All loss is acceptable to the hive.
There were murmurs of assent across the table.
Ghaul diverted some of our best generals,
lamented Thearch.
All to the damnable Sol system for his idiotic crusade. They will not return,
said Kaug.
And neither will Ghaul.
He clenched his fist.
But this weakness didn't start with Ghaul. It started with the bloated traitor Callus.
Kaug and Thearch glared at each other from across the table. They shared a look Keitel knew very well. It often preceded bloodshed. She watched them for a tense moment, and then raised her voice to say,
Enough.
All looked to the Princess Imperial.
My father was infatuated with the myth of his own benevolence,
Keitel said.
He gorged himself and his people on stories of what the Empire could be, and took half measures to make it so. But he never succeeded. He never wished to succeed. I am not my father. Dominus Ghaul was obsessed with his own redemption. He imagined debts owed to him and sought their fulfillment. He used the Legion as a tool to secure himself and his legacy. He saw the Empire as one more thing he was owed. I am not Dominus Ghaul. Amun Arath misled me. Misled us all. Our people are not meant to flee our battles. But neither are we the Hive, throwing ourselves on the blade again and again. There is strength in tactical retreat.
She studied the worried faces of her councillors and felt shame for their weakness, but responsibility as well.
We'll direct all our surviving ships to the Sol system to reclaim whatever remains of the Legion. This is my first order as Empress of the Cabal.
The next day, as they fled their homeworld, a coronation was held upon the Eligos Lex 5, royal flagship of Empress Keitel, leader of the Cabal. Empress, Chapter 8, Empress. A message from Empress Keitel of the Cabal to all her fleet.
I speak to you as crowned Empress of the Cabal Empire, your new leader. As I speak, we flee our home. Some of you lament our loss. Some of you whisper about the weakness of retreat. I assure you, we do not flee out of weakness. we march towards strength. We have found ourselves in a battle with war itself, and I have come to see that the face of war is ugly and poisonous. We are not the same as our enemies. We fight for a reason, for a purpose, not for pointless luxury nor the approval of false gods. Unlike our predecessors, we fight to pay homage to our past and make strides towards our future. A future where all glory is not for vanity, but for our people. We fight for the Empire. We now chart toward the Sol system to recover the soldiers stranded there by Ghaul's hubris. We will rebuild our army and return to reclaim our home. Our future will not look the same as our past. With your trust, I will usher us into a new age, and I will not default on my promises as my father did before me. From this moment forward, all scions of the Cabal Empire are released from the bonds of servitude and granted full citizenship. You are free to remain or leave as you please. You will be granted reasonable supplies for your departure if you choose to go. If you stay, I must warn you, the battle ahead will be long and arduous. Many of us will fight, bleed, and die to preserve our collective freedoms. But together, we will build an army where warriors fight not for themselves or for their grasping leaders, but for each other. There will be no mercy for false gods. The Cabal Empire will rise from this challenge victorious, united. We will draw from our past to give strength to our future as one Cabal.
Praefectus Mask. Kautor smiled as his daughter walked ahead, dragging her hand across the soft filaments of the Valak blooms. Bioluminescent pollen swirled in her wake, barely visible in the glow of sundown. Kautor closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, reveling in the heady scent that marked the beginning of the wet season.
Why did you bring me here?
His daughter asked. Even as she spoke, Kautor pictured her from memory, a small child frolicking in brightly coloured robes. He opened his eyes and saw a full-grown warrior in a towering battlesuit. He gestured towards a plated broadsword stowed on her hip.
The scribe said you fought ferociously in sparring this morning. My blade is insatiable,
she replied, brandishing the weapon and playfully pointing it at her father. Her smile diminished slightly.
You could have seen it yourself.
Kautor did his best to hide a wince.
I will soon enough, Tanam.
Tanam sheathed the blade. Dried grass and petals crunched under Kautor's sabatons as he met his daughter and placed a hand on her shoulder.
So what's this about? A reminder of home on the eve of battle?
Tanam asked. Her father scoffed.
Do you really need reminding?
Tanam grimaced.
I miss it every day. We all do,
her father said with a heavy sigh.
No, I wanted you to have one last chance to see it with your own eyes.
Tanam turned, her brow furrowed.
Last chance? Enough,
Kautor called out. A low rumble resonated through their bones, and the world shifted. Distant mountains undulated and stretched towards the sky. flowers burst into clouds of wriggling bubbles. The world, blurred as light and matter, drained like viscous fluid toward a growing rift in the sky. A shadow that grew until it consumed them. They woke aboard the Barbatus Rex, still streaming through the stars. Their hands were clasped around the handle of a rusted antique blade. A scion stood nearby as the last spectral tendrils of psionic energy connecting the three of them dissipated. Kautor nodded at the scion.
Leave us. I don't understand,
Tanam said as soon as they were alone. Kautor held the blade up.
4 generations ago, this weapon earned our family's place in the Empire. Its history makes it a strong locus for the Mind Walk.
He studied the knife carefully, testing its weight distribution.
But history is a luxury for the victor.
Kautor took the weapon in both hands and broke it in half, grinding the brittle material in his gauntlets. Tanam recoiled slightly.
Father, the world this came from is gone.
Kautor continued.
Home is no longer behind us. It is ahead in the distance, past a towering mountain and over a great sea.
Tanam nodded.
We are Cabal. We eat the mountains and drink the seas.
Kautor leaned forward.
But you cannot do this if your hunger is sated by indulgent reverie. So, we will never walk these thoughts again.
Tanam stiffened.
I understand. Sol is a graveyard for our people. But those warriors never watched our cities burn in soulfire. The memory of home should not be a comfort, my child, but the wound that drives your blood frenzy.
Tanam nodded, but the knot in her gut forced her to speak.
Do you fear them, Father? The Sol warriors?
Kautor smiled proudly and took his daughter's hand.
I do not, my child, because I fight with Tanam, and her blade is insatiable.
Empress, Chapter 9. Truce. Keitel was sitting alone in her private quarters. She glanced up, awoken from her reverie when Tarun arrived.
Empress,
Tarun said, bowing. She was a stickler for formality.
the other counselors are awaiting a decision regarding our arrival in Sol.
Keitel gave her a wry look, as if she didn't know. Tarun waited. When Keitel didn't answer, she pressed further.
Have you made a decision?
Keitel sighed and shifted in her seat.
Not yet,
She said.
There is still much to consider. Sit down.
Tarun hesitated, caught between her dedication to formality and a direct order from her Empress. She gingerly lowered herself into a chair.
The Guardians killed Ghaul.
Keitel said.
Yes,
Said Tarun.
stories say they've killed greater enemies too. Other deities of the Hive, one of the Great Worms, and a sibling of Zivu-Arath.
Keitel added.
Perhaps then, the costs of this venture do not outweigh the benefits.
Tarun mused.
We need every resource at our disposal.
Keitel said. Tarun was quiet. Keitel leaned forward abruptly in her seat.
Do we need to make war to regain the Legion?
Once more, Tyrone was silent. Eventually, she said carefully,
You don't believe we would win?
Keitel saw the blade hidden in Tyrone's question.
We would win,
She said.
After a long and grueling war. We'd sustain huge losses, and we'd leave ourselves open to further devastation at the War God's hands.
Tyrone's gaze turned thoughtful.
Yes, probably.
She studied Keitel's face.
So what do you suggest? We negotiate
Keitel said quietly.
with the Guardians.
Tyrone observed her customary moment of silence.
Some of the councillors won't like it. I know.
Keitel said. She stared past Tyrone, her jaw set.
I don't either. You'll have to make a gesture for them. A nod to our legacy as conquerors. If they see it as a true, equal negotiation,
Tyrone trailed off.
they'll call it weakness.
Keitel finished. Tyrone nodded.
Especially after fleeing Torobatl.
They shared another silence. The ache of mounting stress began to push at Keitel's temples. Her voice was weary when she spoke again.
Then we will demand the Guardians kneel.
Thank you to anyone who has listened to this all the way to the end. This episode only grew in scope as I tried to balance the need to provide context to Keitel's story without it turning into an entire Red War episode. There were a lot of reasons why I chose to start this project from Shadowkeep, but there are times like with this episode where it comes with some drawbacks. Part 2 will be out shortly, but in the meantime, I just want to give a shout out to the Destiny community resources Ishtar Collective, Destinypedia, Destiny Lore Vault, the Destiny Lore subreddit, Destiny Music Archive, and Last City Radio for their work that allows things like this to exist, and as always, to all the writers, artists, designers, and developers at Bungie who create Destiny.